Hi everybody, how's the sound out there? You want to give us a test, Tricia, to make sure?
Testing.
Okay. We're both mic. Shalom. So, I know that we're both the keynote speakers, but for the most part, I've been in San Francisco as a rabbi at Temple Emanu-El for the last 15 years, so you've heard my spiel a lot. So I would like to take this time to really grill Patricia Hellman Gibbs about her life. And I will just begin because somebody tonight remarked upon the fact that stories and relationships are the things that bind us. And so I just wanted to start out with a very quick story, which is that I needed today to come out of the closet as a fourth generation Federation woman. No, it gets better. I started my modeling career in Chicago, Illinois for the La Petite Fashion Show, Federation's annual benefit, at age 3. My grandmother was a founder of the Lion of Judah and the first woman to chair a major Federation camp in the country. And when I was given this wonderful honor to be here with you and to Patricia Hellman Gibbs, I called my mom and I said, "Where's Grandma's Lion of Judah pin?" I remember it was about that big, because when you're 3 and 4, jewelry looks really big. And she said, "It's in the vault, of course." And I said, "Well, get it out of the vault and please send it to me." So, in case you thought that I ripped it off from somebody else or got it on eBay, it's actually my Federation yichus of being here today with all of you and really honoring the gift that I got, as my grandmother would always say, Lador Vador. And by the way, her license plate was Menschmaker. So more on that story in a Yom Kippur sermon coming to you. Today we turn our attention to somebody who, when people say to you, "Who's your rabbi?" or "Who inspires you as a rabbi?" I always think of Patricia Hellman Gibbs as somebody who has been really a beacon for me personally and spiritually, for somebody who has made the choice to not only embrace Judaism, to become a learned Jew, to give back, and to be a teacher. And I also think that to honor Tricia today and to have her here as somebody who you really want to listen to and hear about says a lot about the direction of women's philanthropy and women's philosophy and spirituality. So I want to start out there and ask you to share with us where it all began in terms of your family's influence on you in terms of Judaism and your own philanthropy.
So everybody can hear me? Great. So I guess this is my chance to tell my story, and I really feel so fortunate to have this opportunity to have so many intelligent and dynamic women hearing this. And I don't know how many other times I'm going to get this chance, so I better do this right. But I guess, the question is, what was my Jewish upbringing, and where did this all come from? And to me, it's an interesting story, but I'm also finding that every Jew has an interesting story. And so this is my story. Our household was not Jewish when I was growing up, or so I thought. So I guess I really didn't know much about Judaism. And so that's why I assumed that it was all about religion. So I would say our household was not, quote unquote, religious. But it wasn't until later that I actually found out that Judaism is not just religion. That Judaism is about a lot of other things that hopefully we'll talk about today. And so my encounters with religion were always somewhat disappointing, I guess. Our household was all about sports and school, and we were devoted to, we didn't go to the synagogue, we went skiing. And we got the chance to really pursue that intensively, and my father and mother actually started a school in the mountains. We lived in New York City. They started a school for people like me, ski racers who lived in New York, who wanted to get a good education. And that school still exists today, actually, and they put numerous people in the Olympics, and I actually did make the U.S. ski team. I don't think I really thought a lot about philanthropy as a child. I carried my UNICEF box around on Halloween, and philanthropy in my life wasn't a big deal, but I now find out that it was for my parents. But at the age of 21, my father began a foundation, and at that point, he entrusted each of the children with a certain amount of money. I think it was $5,000 to give. And suddenly, I had to start thinking, there's people out there in the world that need something, and I've been thinking about my skiing all this time. But even while I was, performing and devoting my time to skiing, there was always a little bit of something like missing, or I felt bad that I should be doing something for other people, and this was all about myself. So at the age of 21, it was almost a panicked feeling, like I have to go out and find something to give this money to, and suddenly to find that there was all this need, and how was I going to meet that? And slowly but surely, this became a part of our family kind of culture, me and my siblings getting together to talk about philanthropy. And it really wasn't about religion, It was really only when we moved here to San Francisco in 1990 that my father and my mom had moved here in the 80s. And I think that's when my father really got reconnected with his Jewish roots. And people would say, "Hey, aren't you Jewish? What are you doing? You need to be more involved." And so he got involved with the Federation and with the Temple Emanu-El, just in the sense of having a conversation. And slowly but surely he got more and more involved. And at the end, as you all know, he was extremely involved there and very passionate about being a part of the Federation. So I guess learning now, and when I came to the temple, actually Sydney was one of my teachers there, Rabbi Mintz, in my Judaism 101 class. How did this happen? How did I end up going to the temple at all? I'll go back a little bit before that to the story of starting the free clinic, and the very first person who believed in us. Richard and I started the clinic in 1993 when we realized there were a lot of people with no health insurance out there. And everybody we went to said, "You're kind of nuts to think, wait, you're going to start a free clinic today? I mean, aren't they going to fix this healthcare problem?" And Hillary Clinton was out there, trying to create a national health system, and it seemed like a crazy idea at that time. But in truth, it was a good idea, as we found, and the first person to believe in us was actually Phyllis Cook. And my father arranged a meeting with her. And she heard about this story, and she didn't say, "You're crazy." She said, "What can I do? I'll help. I'll help you." And so that's when I started to realize, all of our donations started to come from Jewish donors. So I really thought at the time there must be a lot more Jewish people in the world, because they were the ones giving. It's really because of that the thing got off the ground. And in fact, Susan Hirsch, who's here, was one of the first people we talked to as well, and she was very encouraging. And then something else came up, and I hate to mention it in this setting because it's distressing, but I think a lot of people were affected by this, and for me it was actually a life-changing event, and that was the moment of the 9/11, and realizing that religion was having a negative effect in the world as I saw it at the time. And at that point I decided that I needed to learn about religion because I really hadn't studied Torah or Bible or anything in my schooling. And in doing that, I read 2 books. I read the Bible, including both Testaments, and I read the Quran. And reading the Bible, there was a section that really spoke to me, and that turned out to be a very important verse, which was, in the Good News Bible, it was stated differently, but in the way we say it, "Hear Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord is one." It seemed to be an important phrase, and I didn't know why. So that's why I went to Temple Emanu-El thinking, well, I should find out why this speaks to me, amid all of the other things I read. And it was like a beacon in a way, drawing me in and making it necessary, vital, crucial that I learn more about it. And that's when I started learning about it, I found out about all of this other Jewish tradition and people that seemed to be doing some of the same things I was doing, very involved in tzedakah and giving back, and I hadn't invented this after all, it turned out. And so that's really the story. That's the beginning of learning about the Jewish roots. And in fact, looking back, finding that our household had Jewish roots as well, and the tremendous generosity of my father, which I think is an expression of this tendency for Jewish giving that he felt just in his bones, and was part of our family culture.
So when I think about the fact that you really became a serious Jew 7-8 years ago, and I harken back to the San Francisco Free Clinic lunch that year, the year that you took the Introduction to Judaism class, you said, I think maybe for the first time publicly, that you were inspired by this word, tzedakah. And I mean, I don't think anybody else at the lunch thought, wow, she said tzedakah. But for her rabbis, that was a big deal publicly, that you kind of came out as a Jew. And not just somebody who was marginally, this whole lunch is about coming out. So think about, what is in your heart now that you haven't expressed yet. You really, what was in your heart had to do with the religion and the philosophy of philanthropy. And so my question is, from that point on, I mean, you were on the fast track to becoming a serious Jew. And I don't want to ask from a show of hands of the people here who were born and raised Jewish, but I would say it's a significantly low number if I were to ask who has read the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran in this room. And I think if you're planning on being around in the next 10 or 20 years, it behooves all of us to read the Quran, the Old Testament, and the New Testament. But what I want to ask you is, at that point, something turned on for you in your own spiritual life. And how has your attitude towards tzedakah and tikkun olam shifted since that point? And what inspires you today to be a giver?
Well, I'll just start with the inspiration part. And as I mentioned, religion had not really been appealing before that. And that's because in our walks of life and the friends I had, and my husband, who's a Christian, the places I had been non-Jewish places, the religious places. And every time I went there, I felt, well, this is good, but I don't belong. I don't belong here. There's something's missing for me. And the first moment I walked into the Judaism 101 class, it was actually Rabbi Hellman, and she was talking about God and God's names, and God has names, and about, I don't know, somebody asked, well, I don't believe in God, and she's like, well, that's okay, just make sure you don't believe in one God. So all of a sudden people were like disagreeing, and they had issues and questions, and I knew that this is where I belonged. And that I also was really far behind because I didn't know anything, and I still don't know a lot of things. I might know Hebrew, and I'm learning Arabic. That doesn't help much with the Torah, but I don't know a lot about festivals and Shabbat and things I'm still learning. So I look to my friends to help me with those things and to bear with me if I make mistakes, which I do. But how has this affected giving? Because clearly we had a tendency to give, and I felt an urge to give, but it was sort of nebulous and not well structured. And I think we all need some kind of teaching about what giving is and how to give and how to inspire your giving so that it feels like an expression of yourself. And Jewish tradition gives that to you in spades. I mean, it's incredible. I'm, as you probably hear later, extremely enamored of Moses Maimonides. For those who weren't at our luncheon last week, yes, my children call me Maimonides because I'm always talking about Maimonides. But all of you know, I'm sure, as Jewish givers, that he has rules of charity, and how you give is very important. And the kinds of things you give to and how you see your giving in an overall picture. So that's how things have changed. Giving is now connected with a very much more powerful force for me, and I feel like I can do it better because of discovering all of these traditions.
So today we are being given not only the gift of your presence, but the gift of your book. And in addition to, being on the USD team, running the San Francisco Free Clinic, and raising 27 children, five children. Sometimes like 27 children. You also wrote this phenomenal book, and I remember when you gave me the copy and I read it, I thought, oh, and she's an author too, and a great author. And so I, first of all, thank you for giving us the gift, the opportunity to read the book that you've shared with every woman here. But if you notice, you'll say, wait, I got the wrong one. It doesn't say Patricia Gibbs on it. It says Sarah Isaias. So this is a two-pronged question. One is, can you share with us why you went with the pen name Sarah Isaias? And I know we don't have an all-nighter ahead of us to teach us, but what was it about Islam that appealed to you?
Well, I'll start with I guess it's the easy question. I'll start with the question of the name. And it actually fits in with a later question, which is helpful. And that is, I wanted to have a name associated with my creative self that expressed my true self. And when I did the bat mitzvah with my father, we were called to the Torah, and the rabbi asked us our Jewish name. And my Jewish name is Sarah, partly because my great-great-great-grandmother's name is Sarah, and partly because it wasn't quite clear if I was becoming a convert or if I was, reestablishing Jewish connections. So it fit with the idea of becoming a convert. But also, truly, I wanted to figure out Sarah. In fact, I find her perplexing, and I thought it might help to have my name be my name, so I can try to figure out our matriarch. And then my father, when Rabbi Pierce asked his Jewish name, he said that it was Isaias. And Isaias is our great-great-grandfather that you read about in my cousin's wonderful book, Towers of Gold, and I highly recommend that book. So this is my Jewish name, Sarah Isaias. It's Sarah Bat Isaias, and that's the story. And plus, I also wanted to have a different identity from my doctor identity, because I don't want to have people think, oh, she's going to give me a religious sermon today when I've got a sprained ankle or something. So that was another reason. And so I have an identity as an author that's separate from, I have some publications under my other name, scientific publications. So what about writing this book and why? And I'll just start by saying that Jackie mentioned the Torah portion for today, which is Lech Lecha for this week. And I find that happens quite a lot, that things seem to tie in with what's going on with the Torah. And that's the case here, that when I read the Torah, I actually found that these stories were somehow connected with me and my life. And that they cycle out there somewhere in a spiritual sphere that affects me. Now, Abraham, we all hear that we're part of the Abrahamic tradition, or there are three Abraham big ones, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. But what does that really mean? And how do we actually understand, are we competing for this father, Abraham, or are we sharing this father? When I discovered my connection with these Jewish Torah stories, and it just sparked this love of Torah, which I haven't really said, that I need to know more Torah all the time. But I had to write this book. It just came to me that I needed to try to reconcile these brothers, Ishmael and Isaac. And this happened during a conversation that I was actually having with Rabbi Kushner, who's a wonderful teacher at Temple Emanu-El, where he was talking about writing a book about Abraham and Isaac and how it would be good if we could reconcile the father and the son. And yes, that would be wonderful. Obviously, that occupies our mind as well. But I had read the Torah. I had gone back to read the Torah after reading the Quran, and somehow it sensitized me to the story of Hagar, Sarah, Ishmael, and Isaac in the Torah. It's a very puzzling story, and there seem to be unanswered riddles there that might help us to understand. I was talking to Peg Sandal earlier about this issue, which is that our words can actually create a world. And this book looks at the power of words. And it tries to impart to people a beautiful reality of everybody appreciating each other's traditions. And so the book is intended to create an understanding of another tradition that we might feel fear or, a desire not to learn more about it in a way that's understandable and powerful for people.
Great. So I honestly could, if I didn't have a bris to go to in 4 hours, I could be here all afternoon with all of you. Honestly, I could sit and listen to Tricia for a long time, but I do know that we have limit of time, and I wanted to open it up so that I'm not the only one asking questions. If you have a question that you would like to ask of Tricia about anything she's talked about or hasn't talked about yet. Yes, Dana.
So I'm always amazed and inspired by you, so thank you for being here today. The thing that I practically think about when I think about your life is, and especially this Jewish journey, is how did you prioritize it in your life? Because what you're talking about is not something that you took, well, I'll take 15 minutes this week. So did you give up something? Did you change your life to be able to explore this whole world?
Let me just repeat the question so everybody can hear it, which is, Dana Corbin, front table. She said she wonders, in terms of the allocation of time, you heard that 7, 8 years ago, this explosion, well, was there anything that she had to give up in terms of time as she was prioritizing all this newness in her life?
I definitely gave something up which probably was excessive anyway. I don't know. Those of you who know my father may know that he actually ran 100-mile races and spent a lot of time exercising, and that was something that he also imparted to the rest of us. And so I was really involved in ultra running at that time, and that takes a lot of time. And so I guess I just took, shifted from that to putting that kind of effort into studying. And truly, I guess I followed the rule that a little bit every day gets you a long way in terms of studying something like Hebrew, and just sort of taking the first step, and then every day doing a little bit can really take you a long way. At this point, I did enroll in school, and I'm getting a master's degree in Jewish studies half-time. So, and I do work at the clinic half-time. So, and I'm working on my next book too.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
How has this affected your children?
How has this affected your children? A question every Jewish mother wants to know. Yes.
Yeah, and it's an excellent question. My children, this happened when my youngest, I believe, was around 15 or so. And so they're post the age of bar bat mitzvah. On the positive side, they're not any religion, because we raised them to do what I did, which is to ski and go to school and, be secular people. And so at that moment, when I started to study, I started to talk about the Torah inside our house. And they see an example of a person who's, I don't think I've gone too nuts with this. Sometimes when people become, have a religious experience, it's sort of like, oh my gosh, scary. But I think it's been very useful, and there's often been moments when the things I know have been helpful to them. And they got to see the bar bat mitzvah, they saw their grandfather doing the ceremony with me. That was very powerful. So I am hopeful that something will speak to them as well that will show them their connection and their roots in Judaism. So I figure it's better to have someone talking Torah in the house than nobody.
Okay, one more question. That was your question. That was a lot of people's question. Okay.
About how you have been working with them on philanthropy.
So the question is to come back and frame it in Lador Bador terms from generation to generation. How has Tricia been talking to her kids about that aspect of philanthropy?
Well, Lador Vador is a huge topic at this lunch and in my life right now with the passing of my father, and may his name be a blessing, his memory be a blessing. My father actually got this started where he began the same process with my children that he had done with us, where he began to give them increasing gifts that they can give away, and with small, he was very mathematical, and so he, for whatever age they were, they get, I think, $800. Multiply that by their age, and then they didn't have to feel, jealous, so they know it's of each other that one has more to give than the other. And some of my kids have given to Jewish causes already. My daughter Ruthie gave the entire thing to Shalom and several years in a row, and now she's giving something very interesting in Israel, which is called Haverut, and it's an art program for children with chronic medical illnesses. My daughter's an artist. And so I expect that as this conversation goes on in the house, they will be more likely to give to Jewish causes or generally to need things that need our help. And thanks to Dad for beginning that tradition.
We have one more question, and it goes to my friend Barbara.
To end on a light note, your dad was very fond of humor, and after his passing, we started our Torah class with a joke that you told. How do you see Jewish humor entering into a life that's quite serious?
Well, that is a puzzle, and it's one that I've thought about, and I've sort of lamented my kind of lack of inheritance of this great genetic propensity of my father, who could think of a joke at any occasion, and sometimes they were clean, but even with my kids, they sometimes weren't, But I think that there's a clue again in the names of our patriarchs, Yitzhak and Yishmael. So Yitzhak, the name means he will laugh. Now, I don't see Isaac laughing anywhere in the Torah, but there's some kind of clue there to me that this is our purpose, perhaps, I don't want to speak for God, but there might be a purpose for laughter in the world. And it could be that the Jews are somehow connected with that. So, I guess I could pray to receive some joke capabilities, and maybe I'll just have to go back and find Dad's joke books, because that really helps.
Well, Barbara opened it up for the closer, and here's the closer. Write this one down. About the two Jewish guys and the other one who were on the desert island.
Yes.
And they can't figure out how they're going to get off. And they don't know. And the first guy starts praying and praying and praying, and they're saying, well, what are you praying about? I'm praying so that somebody will come and help me out, and we're going to get off this island. The second guy starts praying also, saying the Shema. And the third guy is building a hammock, builds a straw hat, gets in the hammock, is laying back, and the two other guys look at this Jew and says, well, what are you doing? We're going to die here on the island. We're praying to our God, and what are you doing? And this guy says, 2 years ago, I made a pledge to the Federation for $100,000. And last year, I made a pledge for $150,000. They'll find me. So please, a big round of applause for Patricia, Hellman, Gibbs. And because it's always good to circle around Lador Vador. At a certain point in our lives, we don't know where our kids are at every moment, and it happens at different ages for different people. So I just want to share this moment in my life where for the first time, I didn't know where my 17-year-old son Eli was. He wasn't at school, he wasn't at home, I was at the temple, and this is a shout out to Stu Schwartzman. And there's a knock at the door, and there's like a 6'1" man standing at the door of my office, and I'm meeting, and I open the door, and there's my son Eli at the temple. And I didn't know where he was supposed to be, and there he was at the temple, and I said, what are you doing here? He's wearing a jacket and a tie and a shirt, and of course this story ends with me crying in my office. He said, Ema, didn't you know today is the Teen Philanthropy Fund from the Federation, and now that I'm on the advisory board, I'm going to vet the kids and interview them, the ones that are incoming. So to think about all the places our kids could be. For my kid, he feels very at home in the temple. My grandmother, I'm sure, is felling wherever she is, that he's involved in the Federation. When I think about your kids, I think about the fact that there's so many different ways for our kids to be involved, and that we need to, as you said to me yesterday, have faith in what we have. Have faith in our beautiful tradition and in the Torah, And our kids will get it at different times in their life as long as we don't force them to. Many of them will come to it on their own. So thank you very much.